So as was mentioned earlier, what we're going to take a look at right now is a specific safe routes to school dashboard that we have actually worked to put together in conjunction with the Idaho Transportation Department. Now, I may be a little bit biased, but I think this is a fantastic resource. In fact, we have shared this exact dashboard with a couple other state law enforcement agencies and special interest groups around the nation. And everyone we've shown it to has wanted us to put one together for them. So we're currently in the process of putting something similar like this together with other state agencies. But as of right now, Idaho is kind of the one with the most developed and the most advanced one that we've seen right now. So this is a publicly available dashboard. You don't need to log in. You don't need to request access to it. It is publicly available information that the Idaho Transportation Department has chosen to share. I'm going to send in through the chat window right now the link to this dashboard. Now, we are working with the Idaho Transportation Department right now to get this link loaded on their safety website. You can access several other Numetric dashboards from here as well. Currently, Safe Routes to School is not among them. We're working to get that added as soon as we can. But for now, just bookmark that link that we sent you right there, and that should give you access to the tool. Before I get too far into the mechanics of the tool, I wanted to talk a little bit about the data that is powering this application. As I mentioned, we partnered with ITD. We've been a partner with them for several years now, and we have a real-time data connection set up with ITD's traffic database. So as soon as a crash is cataloged and it exists in the Idaho traffic database, then it will show up in our platform. Now, a little disclaimer about that: working with very recent data is a double-edged sword. It's great because you've got recent data, but it's tricky because you have immature data. Something that surprised me as I began to work in this industry was how much this data can evolve after the first couple months from the time of the crash. So if you're looking up very recent crash data, I would encourage you to be just a little cautious with those numbers. Just because sometimes locations can change, crash date or times can change, crash types can change, and unfortunately severities can change as well. So if depending on what the circumstances are around the crash, you may unfortunately see the severity either increase or possibly even change to a fatality. So just kind of be aware that as we're working with this really recent data, anything less than a month old, I would be just a little cautious utilizing. So sorry about that. Let's kind of take a look now at this dashboard. So that's the data that is powering it. Now, the crashes that we're actually showing on this dashboard are crashes that took place within 1,000 feet of a school in Idaho. So these are our near school crashes. So we actually have, to the best of our knowledge, the location of most, if not all, schools, K through 12 schools in the state of Idaho, including private schools and charter schools as well. We actually have their locations, their physical locations plotted, and we're querying to find any crashes that occurred within 1,000 miles of that specific location. So that's the actual data that is being displayed in this Safe Routes to School dashboard. You'll notice when you come to this screen, I think our interface is fairly intuitive and easy to use. So the learning curve should be pretty easy to navigate. But if you ever run up against any issues at all, feel free to email me directly. My email's in the invite here, or you can email support@numetric.com, and we're more than happy to help out. Let me just shoot my email in the chat window here as well. I can type my own email address. So you'll notice that the dashboard itself, this landing page kind of has some summary information on it. Up at the top of the screen, you will see a filter bar. This is mostly used to see what filters are applied, but you can actually also come in here and apply your own custom filters if you'd like. We'll show you how you can do that. If you look at the actual body of the dashboard itself, right here, we kind of have some background information on what exactly Safe Routes to School is and what this data is. So we can see here that 38,670 crashes in Idaho have happened within 1,000 feet of a K through 12 school. 12% of those crashes have happened, or excuse me, 12% of total crashes for the state of Idaho have actually occurred within 1,000 feet of an elementary or of a K through 12 school. And then you can kind of see we've got it broken down by severity as well. Now, this actually follows a pretty traditional distribution for crash patterns. So you can see we have most of our crashes are property damage only, meaning no one got hurt. But we can also see these other severities of crashes here. Now, one thing I did want to call out about these dashboards, you'll notice my cursor here on the screen changes from the mouse pointer to the little finger. That indicates that I can actually click on this and apply it as a filter to the dashboard. So if I click right here on possible injury crashes, for example, you'll see that it added crash severity, possible injury up to the filter bar at the top. What this means now is all of my data is updating to show me now just my possible injury crashes. So we can see here that number has dropped down to 7,434 crashes. And if I remove this filter, you'll notice those metrics are going to update in real time. This one I'm not sure of. I think this is a static metric about the total number of crashes, not the specific crash type. But nearly every metric is going to update to match your filter criteria. Now, at the top, just under the filter bar, you'll notice that there's a drop-down tab. And this is where you can get to the real meat of the dashboard. This introduction page is just like the cover on a book. It just kind of tells you what to expect a little bit. The actual who, when, where, and why sections of the dashboard sorry about that. The actual who, when, where, and why sections of the dashboard are going to give you the detailed information about those different kind of focus areas. So if we go to who, for example, this is going to tell us the types of people who are involved in crashes. So here we can see bicycle involved crashes, bus involved crashes, pedestrian involved crashes, near school crashes by driver age. And then we can also see types of vehicles and number of vehicles involved. Now, this can be informative. And again, this can also serve to kind of reduce the scope of maybe what we want to look at. So for example, if we're doing like a public outreach campaign with high schools and we're talking to new drivers about the, being safe on the roadways around your schools, then you can actually come in and select all of the crashes from people who are high school aged. So you can go ahead and throw that filter in here, and now we can see all of the distribution of crashes for people who are that age. So this can really help focus those public outreach and public information campaigns and give you really targeted, meaningful, and insightful data. Let's hop over here a little and take a look at the When tab. Now, the When and Where tab, personally, I think are the two most insightful tabs, specifically as we talk about safe routes to school. I'm going to push this little sidebar out of the way. So as we look at the When tab is going to tell us time distribution and time information about these crashes. So here we can see is our yearly breakdown. So we can actually see the year-over-year comparison of crash severity. So if we want to look at like our suspected serious injury crashes right here indicated by red, you can see that they kind of have dipped down a little in 2013, they rose back up a little in 14, down again a little in 15, and you can kind of get a pulse for what's actually going on. So here we can see in 2020, the total number of A-injury crashes, those suspected serious injury crashes, was right around 51, which is down pretty decently from 2019. Now, as a side note, that's actually a little interesting for 2020 because one pattern that we have noticed as we've dealt with traffic patterns over 2020 was generally traffic volumes went down in 2020, but the number of crashes actually went up and the number of severities went up as well. So this kind of breaks that trend a little bit. That tells us there were fewer crashes and fewer severe crashes in 2020 around schools in Idaho. So that's some good news. Now you can see here's our 2021. Obviously those numbers are low. We're halfway through the year. So that'll continue to build and evolve as that data comes in. So each time you log in, you'll see new data adding in and those bars are gonna bump up a little more.
Greg, a question about that, if I might. The 2020 and 2021 to date, the schools have largely, or many of them have been closed. Does this maybe also tell us that those crashes around schools might, and the age of drivers that we saw in the previous slide, maybe that the crashes around schools really are the school age drivers, perhaps more than others?
It could be. So to kind of explore and pull at that thread a little bit here, if we click on 2020 and then hop back to our Who tab, we can now see the driver age distribution chart for 2020. So we can see here that if I just drop this filter again, you'll see that comparison is holding a little bit of water. I mean, there's not astonishing numbers, but you know, the distribution between those does tend to flatten out a little bit. So I think just this, looking at this evidence on the surface, seems like there might be something there. Yeah, it looks like Lisa just asked that same question. Schools being closed did affect that. Again, the less traffic you have going into and out of those high traffic locations, that's absolutely going to have an impact on that for sure. Now, if we come back to when, I want to show you one of my personal favorite charts on the Safe Routes to School dashboard that we've got. If I look here at near school crashes by time of day, I can open this chart up, and if I click on that chart header, you'll notice now I'm looking at kind of the full screen chart there. Here we can actually see the time of day distribution of when those crashes are occurring. Now, as you would expect, crashes around K through 12 schools are going to have a drop off and pickup peak, right? Right around the time when you're driving a lot of traffic to those schools, that's when you're going to see the crashes. Now, the other thing that you can do here as well is you can isolate for crashes that may have put school children in jeopardy. You know, these crashes at you know, midnight and 1 in the morning, yeah, they're definitely things we want to address. But I think we can all agree if there has to be a crash at an elementary school, I would love for it to be at 1 o'clock in the morning, not 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you want to drill into a specific time period, you can actually use these same filters right here to look at those peak time periods. So again, whether it's for you know, maybe some specific enforcement or public outreach or whatever it is we want to do with this data, I can drill in and look at those early morning drop-offs. So here we're looking from 7 to 9 a.m. And now I can see the crash patterns just during that early morning drop-off. And I can even extend that just to look at the school day, right? So it really allows you to get really granular, really precise crash data to help you make informed decisions and you know, help you really kind of guide your thought process and make them a little safer. Sorry, my computer's going crazy with messages at the moment. Let me turn that off really quick. Now, along with the time of day, we have 2 other really cool charts. Now, these aren't really cool in the fact that you look at them and go, oh, wow, but they're cool in the potential of what they can give you, the ability for you to refine your data down. So you can now look at near school crashes by month of year and by day of week. So if we want to put together a really precise picture here, we can actually come in and look at crashes that took place during the window of time of school hours, so 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. I can now look at just the months in which school is in session. So we'll go ahead and just select a swath of months here. I'm just going to exclude, oh, here, let me show you a different way to do that, actually. This is where you may want to use your filter bar up the top here that's just not going to cooperate. So you can come in and just individually select those months that you want to apply. And now I can do the same thing with the days of the week. So I can come in and now just look at school days. So now it looks like a lot of filters up at the top, but I just clicked a couple intuitive bar charts here, and now I'm looking at all of the crashes that took place on school days, during school months, during the school hours of operation. Now, obviously there's some outliers in here, right? Memorial Day is going to be included in here, and there's going to be some holidays and things like that that we'll need to account for as well. But compared to just looking at the overall data, we're now getting a much more accurate, much more insightful and precise look at where these crashes are actually occurring. So with those filters set, I'm now going to hop over to the Where tab. Now the Where tab is really quite insightful. The Where tab is actually going to show us these specific crash locations plotted on a map. Now, not only is that good just because spatially we can see where the crashes are occurring, but now is when we start to get into individual school districts, individual schools, individual communities, and we can really start to get some specific numbers now. So I've got my school day filters all kind of applied at the top that are carrying over from the When tab. And I want to now drill in here and start to look at maybe a specific school district. So let me kind of just open it up to the group. Is there a specific school district anyone would like to take a look at here? First one I hear gets it. If not, I'm just going to do Boise, and no one wants that.
Yes, I do. This is Lisa, Boise.
There we go. Boise Independent School District. So we look at this near school crashes by district. This is actually a partition chart showing us the distribution of these crashes. So the larger the square in this specific chart, that means the more crashes they account for. Now, as you would expect, Boise is going to account for a lot of them, especially when we're comparing it with Bonneville. So just a larger metropolitan area generally is going to have more crashes. So if I click here on Boise Independent School District, then it adds that filter up at the top, and our map now is going to zoom in and show us the area of the Boise Independent School District. So now here are the crash distribution for all of the near school crashes during school hours and during the school year and the school week for the Boise School District. So you can kind of see these little pockets popping up for each of the schools, right? Now, once you've clicked that filter, as you continue to scroll down, you can now see we have near school crashes by school name. So this chart is telling us where most of these crashes are taking place. Now, shouldn't come as a huge surprise that Boise High School, it's downtown, it's a high school. These are two things that generally are going to lead to more crashes, right? So no surprise there that Boise High School is leading the list. But this one really kind of did surprise me a little bit to see an elementary school that high on the list. And I completely agree, Lisa. It's hard to get excited about the data when each of these is someone whose life was impacted, right? It really is sad. So if we look here at this elementary school, it's actually going to zoom into that specific location. Now, this one, this elementary school, I've looked at this one specifically before. This is right off of a freeway off-ramp. So you're going to have a very high traffic area, very busy roads, very high speeds, regardless of the speed limit on the road, and an elementary school right there. That's going to be a recipe for a lot of crashes, unfortunately. So we can actually zoom in here and see where these crashes are occurring. And again, remember, all of these are during school hours. So it really does provide that insight and that ability for you to kind of prioritize and really identify areas of concern and where you should be spending your time and your energy. And again, whether it's public outreach or increased enforcement, whatever your specific output of this is going to be. Now, if you don't want to go from a school organizational hierarchy, which is what we've been doing over here, going districts down to schools, right? We can actually remove these and come take a look at geographic distribution, right? So we've got counties and cities. So if you want to look at it from a municipal perspective, you can do that as well. So we can apply the exact same filters. Now, this time let's hop over and take a look at Twin Falls. So I'll go ahead and click Twin Falls. And then you can see near school city crashes by city. Again, there we've got Twin Falls. You can zoom in there if you'd like. Or we can come in and look at any of these elementary schools or high schools as well. So it really is a very insightful, very easy to use tool. Now, I believe the Pocatello district had one that was pretty insightful as well here. So if we look at the elementary school down here in downtown Pocatello, I guess you'd call it, you'll notice again, we've got a freeway junction and the elementary schools are right there. Now, that is good and that's bad. One thing to keep in mind as you look at this is it's only gonna filter out the crashes you tell it to filter out. So we look at these crashes right here. A lot of these crashes are on I-15. Now, a crash right here, even though it's close to an elementary school, probably didn't put any specific child at risk if they were walking to or from school or biking to and from school, because it's on I-15. Still an area of concern, but just kind of keep your eyes peeled and make sure that you're critical of the data you're looking at as well. Because we'd hate to make some, start throwing out some numbers and start a really aggressive campaign, only to find out that the bulk of the fatalities are actually on an interstate that just happens to be 900 feet away from the elementary school. So make sure that you are checking the map and that you're kind of looking at what you might want to exclude from that specific report.
I have a question on that. Is there a way to limit the radius around a school?
So right now it defaults to 1,000 feet. We have some filters right here that you can use and manipulate on the map. I'm just going to give you a disclaimer. We're currently working on making them a little bit more stable, but let me just kind of demo those for you really quick. And you can probably use these to do what you're asking for. So if we look on the map, first off, I did want to point one thing out. This download map button right here is potentially very helpful and very insightful for this group as well. This allows you just to download the actual map so you can see where those crashes are. That means you can use it in presentations and emails and whatever you'd like to. So you can get that information out of our system. But if we look at the map here, we have two buttons, a Polygon tool right here. This allows you to essentially draw a shape on the map and they will use that shape as a filter. Or you can use this marker tool. It draws circles for you. It's I call it the radius filter. But what you can then do is come in and draw your own custom filter to further refine the area of what you're looking at. So here's our elementary school right here. If I take this polygon filter and I start clicking on the map, it normally doesn't like it when I do this with a presentation. So I apologize. Like I said, we're working on improving the stability of this, but it actually, I'm going to come back to that one. Hold on just one second. it'll actually allow you to go in and draw a filter on the map, and then that'll allow you to exclude roadways. So if you see I-15 there, for example, you can kind of clip that out and look at the more refined numbers if you'd like. Let me hop back in here to where we were in Pocatello, and we were looking at this elementary school. Let's see if I can get these to work for me. Yeah, there we go. So you'll see here that I can actually come in and draw a filter on the map, and I can choose which crashes I want to include and which crashes I want to exclude. So if I come down here and then move that one down. Now I'm not doing a really pretty shape, so I apologize in advance. It's not going to close off for me. Well, like I said, it really doesn't like it when I'm streaming video and people, but you can kind of get the general handle of it. And again, we're working on stability with that. But you can come in and add some custom filters here. So if we add this marker tool, let's see if I can get that one to work with me. That one's probably not going to work for me either. I probably just shouldn't have shown these off, but I like them so much. Let's try that one more time with that marker tool here. So I can come in, drop the marker on top of the elementary school. Yeah, it's not going to work. We'll get those working, and then I'll shoot an email out to you guys and let you know when those map filters are working. But that will allow you to define your own custom radius. So you can't increase it because by default, we're only looking at crashes within 1,000 feet, but you can decrease it. So if you just want to look at crashes within 500 feet, then once we get that map filter working again, you can put that on there and reduce the scope of your crashes. So, sorry about that. I thought I had a great answer, but my computer came back to bite me. As you scroll down on this Where tab as well, you can also see we have near school crashes by road type and by intersection type. So if you now want to, again, further drill down and look at crashes that maybe took place on we call it a centerline road segment. It's just a non-intersection road. Then you can click not an intersection. If you want to look at intersection related crashes, again, you can click on four-way intersection. But we can see here that the distribution of these crashes, most of these crashes in Pocatello, at least near this elementary school, are taking place on a centerline road segment. So not at an intersection, not at a crosswalk. So we can see here four-way intersections, T intersections, and Y intersections. Now you can also come through and look at the roadway types. You know, that can kind of help you get an idea of maybe where these crashes are taking place. Now, near school crashes by location. This one again might provide some insight. You can see on a street, not at an intersection, and then there's a parenthetical, may still be intersection related. It could have been caused by, you know, an intersection being adjacent, obviously. But within the intersection boundary of two streets at a junction, so that's where we call them driveways. So a public access to the roadway itself, that would be considered a junction. It's not an intersection necessarily, but like leaving the parking lot of the elementary school, that would be considered a junction. And then you can see here in parking lots themselves or in residential driveways. So we can kind of, again, provide really quite granular data and input into our insight into those crashes. The last tab I want to take a look at here, and I apologize, there's a lot, we're just kind of blitzing through it. Again, as long as you understand the mechanics of how it operates, then you can come in and really dedicate some time and explore. And in fact, I would really encourage you block out a half hour, an hour in the next couple days, just to kind of dive in and start to explore the data. That's where you can really kind of interact with the data yourself, obviously. The Why tab is going to help us understand what led to these crashes or what contributed to these crashes. So here we can see top 10 contributing circumstances. Now, one thing to note is there may be multiple contributing circumstances to a crash. So if you're doing math and numbers and percentages and trying to say X percentage of crashes, you know, were this crash type or something like that, your numbers may not add up perfectly. Some of these can have multiple values in them. So just kind of be aware of that. But here we can see following too close, failed to yield, inattention, failed to maintain lane, alcohol or impaired, improper lane change, vision obstruction. So again, if you've got a specific public outreach campaign, inattention, for example, you know, distracted driving is a huge contributor to crashes. You can actually now come back and see where these inattention crashes are occurring and what the distribution is for those specific crashes. So we can come in here as well, and we can see crash types, first harmful event and most harmful event. Crash types, again, we've got rear angle, or rear end and angle. Those are generally our kind of leading crash types. So nothing necessarily abnormal around the school here. And then again, you can come in and see lighting conditions, weather conditions, and road conditions as well. So this can be really helpful if you want to, you know, coming into the winter months, start to raise awareness or look at how that snow might be impacting crashes around schools as well. That's just a really quick blitz through each of these different tabs. There's one more thing I did want to show you, and then I'll kind of open it up to questions and we can kind of start to look at some more specific stuff if you'd like. I talked a little bit about how to download the map. So if you remember here on the map interface, you can click the little download arrow right there, and it will save this map as an image file for you. You can do the same thing with all of these other chart types as well. So if you're meeting with the Pocatello School District, for example, you can actually come in and download this chart and show the distribution of crashes across the schools in their district. And you can use this in your presentation. So let me show you what that looks like. It'll actually just download an image file that you can go ahead and just drop right into a PowerPoint. You can drop it into an email, a flyer, whatever you'd like to do with that. And that's available for all of these different chart types. Again, just hover over the chart, click that download button, and you can download the chart. Now, you can download an entire tab of data as well. So if you want to download, for example, if you click the download button up here at the top, you can download the Y tab, come here to the tab, click Y, click Create Report, and this is now going to, oh, we'll have to fix that. Sorry about that. Last week, we changed some of the data on the back end, and a couple things are still kind of shaken loose. So I apologize about that. But this will, imagine if you will, it will download all of those chart types for you. So, one just thing that we have seen people have a lot of success with is some groups will actually use this dashboard in lieu of a presentation. So rather than putting a PowerPoint together, we've seen a lot of people actually have success using this dashboard in their meeting, because then that allows you to answer questions and to drill into things a little bit more. So, you know, if we're looking at this, going back to this elementary school in Pocatello here, it allows you then to go to a specific neighborhood, drill in, zoom in, and see where those crashes are taking place in that neighborhood, and give just generally a little bit more dynamic of a presentation than just kind of a static PowerPoint. But that's just something that some people have had a lot of success with, so I usually like to share that. That, in a nutshell, is the Safe Routes to School dashboard. So again, we're pulling all the crash data, updating nightly from ITD. Be a little careful of recent crashes, but we are pulling that data in every night. So you should have access to the most up-to-date data. And this is free and available for anyone to use. You don't need to request access to it. Are there any questions? I don't want to burn through the whole time. I don't know if we had anything else allocated here for the rest of the meeting. But if you've got questions or anything else you'd like me to kind of look at or explore, I'm happy to help out with those now. So I'll give you just a second to shoot those in if you've got them.
So does anyone have questions? Thank you, Greg. First of all, that was a great overview.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it. I always like being invited to present at these meetings. So
Yeah. Well, I'll kick off a question since we also have a city planner on board, and I know we've got folks who are interested in pedestrian bicycle crashes beyond just around schools. Maybe just briefly tell us how you'd look at that data.
yeah, great question. And sorry, that's something I normally include in there. It slipped my mind. So thank you for calling that out. If you click up here at the filter bar at the top, you'll actually see there's a lot of different filters that you can actually go in and apply yourselves. You don't have to rely on the charts to add filters. So if we come up here, for example, and type in pedestrian, then we can see there's quite a few crash types that are coming up. We can see pedestrian related. We can also see pedestrian and pedal cycle related. So if we want to look at both pedestrian and bicycle related crashes, I can just add that. Oh, hold on. I can add that filter here. It's fighting me a little bit. So we'll just add pedestrian related as true. And then we'll add pedal cycle related is, so pedestrian related is true. Let me talk a little bit about the relationship between the filters too, because it can be a little fiddly if you're not aware of what you're doing. So just by typing in pedestrian related is true, I can now come in and you'll see all these charts have updated and we're only looking at pedestrian related crashes. Okay, so here's where those pedestrian related crashes are occurring in Pocatello. Now, let me kind of reset this whole thing and I'll come back. The way that these filters interact with each other, if you add two filters that are different filters, then they're actually going to work as and filters, meaning the crash has to meet both of those criteria in order to be displayed. So you saw what I did there. I added pedestrian related as true, and then pedal cycle related is true. There are two crashes in the state of Idaho. They're not mapping right now. There are two crashes in the state of Idaho that involved both a pedestrian and a bicyclist. So be careful when you're adding these filters because they're going to stack on each other as and filters. So the crash has to meet all of those criteria in order to be displayed. So if I use the pedestrian and pedal cycle related filter, then this is going to show us that is not set up correctly. I know we've got one in here that works. Again, this was part of that data migration we did last week, and we're still kind of tightening up some of the data, so I apologize about that. We just need to update this filter, and that will show you crashes that had either a pedestrian or a bicyclist in it. But for now, you would actually just need to run that as two separate reports. One would be pedal cycle is true, and then you'd need to run a second report for pedestrians is true. But like I said, we have a filter. It's just there's something broken on the back end. And Audra, who's normally my presenting sidekick, she usually hops in and fixes these as they come up in the presentation, but she's out of town today. So unfortunately, it's just me. But that's, so to answer your question then, Elaine, that is how you would come in. You go into the filter bar at the top and you'd scroll through those different filter values that are available, and you can manually add those different filters. And that's available. There's quite a few filters in there. So there's some really insightful things that you can actually add through that filter bar too. Any other questions from anyone?
You guys aren't usually this quiet. There must be something.
Greg,
Yes.
this is Anna Marie. Why is there two pedestrian related? In our last presentation, you guys acknowledged that there's two, but how are we supposed to know which one? You said which one is better with the maps and the other one isn't. How are we supposed to know which one?
So if we type in pedestrian right here, there's pedal cycle, fatal pedestrian involved, pedal cycle related, pedal cycle fatality. This is the one that we're currently fixing, so I apologize about that one. Pedestrian related crash count, and fatality. So each of these just tells you a slightly different thing. So pedestrian related fatalities is going to show you the pedestrian related crashes that resulted in a fatality. So it's got that severity modifier included in there with it. Pedestrian related crash count should show you, this is pulling from the crash level data set. It's just pulling from a slightly different data set, but it should show you let's see here. So this is just going to show you essentially the same thing. It's just a different type of filter. We need to clean this up a little bit. Again, I apologize about some of the discrepancies in here, but to keep it simple, I just encourage you use the simplest filter title. That's generally going to get you the best result. So if you want pedestrian related, select pedestrian related instead of getting into some of these kind of more intricate ones. Some of these are built out for very specific charts that we have displaying. So that's generally where they're coming from.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And again, I apologize. There's still just a little bit of fine tuning we need to do on the back end of this. So there are some hiccups, unfortunately, but.
Well, a lot more data than we've been used to being able to get. So regardless. Yeah.
And one thing that I would encourage is you're going to come across questions around, like Anna Marie's question around which specific filter, what's the difference between these? Feel free to reach out to me. Just shoot me a note and I can help you understand what the difference is between those. I'm more than happy to do that. Generally, I check my email a couple times a day, so I may be not super on top of the ball with a response, but I'll generally get back to you pretty quickly. So.
Any other questions? Well, we told everyone 4 o'clock, and I always try to, even though we were a little late starting, try to keep it to that. So don't necessarily want to keep you longer, but I think what I would welcome is if you do have any more questions, either email Greg. If you could copy me, then I can keep track of the kinds of questions that are coming up, so that when I do a report, I can make sure that we're answering all the questions that all of you have. At the city level, Elizabeth, we'd love to hear from you as well. If you have questions about how to use this, there's a non-school specific set of data that you can also use, and we'd be happy to, I know Greg would too, walk you through that if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely. And just a quick plug for that. This is one of many dashboards, public dashboards that we have for Idaho. So if you do want to look at more crash data in depth, not just crashes around schools, let us know. I'd be happy to set up some one-on-one training or some walkthroughs of those resources as well. So thanks for plugging that over.